I'd like to thank you for welcoming myself and Deacon Lynn Smith and Ruling Elder Tom Davis into your community of faith, into your house of worship here this morning. I want to say a special thank you to the session of this church that, along with Canfield and Westminster sessions, approved this idea that was sort of brainstormed with Pastor Paul and Pastor Larry and myself. And it's exciting. I'm excited to be here. And I thank you for welcoming us in. We enjoyed the early service and were welcomed by that section of this community of faith and enjoyed our time during the Sunday school hour with sort of more in-depth conversation about what's going on in our church and what's happening here. And so it's been a wonderful morning together. A couple of things I need to share before I read the Bible reading this morning. One, you need to know you not only have Westminster Presbyterian Church's current pastor here, you have my predecessor also in attendance here this morning. Didn't think you were going to get away with not any recognition. There we go. Pastor David Joker and his wife Amy served Westminster faithfully for over 20 years, and I am following in his footsteps and have big shoes to fill. So there's a couple of us here from Westminster today. I should ask you, what's your favorite Bible verse? Maybe that's what I should all of them. And also, I need to maybe defend myself a little bit. After Tom spoke, I need you to know that the whole staff didn't flee because I showed up. I don't want there to be any confusion that I ran around and dodged. In fact, I was the one screaming, "Please don't leave! I just got here. I need some stability as I arrived." But it's been a wonderful opportunity to watch God call new leadership and new blood into the life of the church. And I'm excited about what's taking place at Westminster and how God is at work through the staff and the leadership and the committees and elders and deacons of our church. So it's a good day. It's a good time to be a part of Westminster Church. I'm privileged and honored to be called to be the pastor. So. Friends, our Bible reading for this morning, which is going to be a Bible reading for this Sunday and the next two Sundays, as the pastors are all preaching from the same text. Again, this is from Matthew chapter 4. Hear now these words. As Jesus walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And as he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee. Bending their nets, he called them. And immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable unto you. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. No one who meets Jesus ever stays the same. So if you find yourself being afflicted by a life that is a mess, and you meet Jesus, chances are good he will offer you comfort. But on the other hand, if you find that your life is relatively comfortable and predictable and decent and in order, and you meet Jesus, chances are good he is going to afflict you with holy discomfort and mess up your life. Shane Claiborne, a prominent Christian activist and author, once said, "I used to be such a good kid before I became a Christian. I meet Christians all the time who come up to me and they're like, man, my life was such a mess. And then I met Jesus and everything kind of came together. Well, God bless you, because I pretty much had my life together. And then I met Jesus and he messed me up. And I'm still sort of recovering." So we have these disciples in our Bible reading for this morning, and they had carved out lives that were pretty predictable. and ordinary before they met Jesus. Simon Peter and his brother Andrew were casting nets into the sea. They were fishermen. James and his brother John were also fishermen. They were sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, and they were mending their nets. It seems that fishing was the family business. The smell of fish was permanently on their hands. The smell of the sea was a part of every breath they had taken in their lives. And this was the life that they knew. This was the life that they lived every day, year after year after year. Life for them was predictable. It was ordinary. Maybe it was forgettable. But then on one particular ordinary day, Jesus walked by, and he said to them, "Follow me." 2 words. And we're told they immediately dropped their nets, left behind their families, and followed him. And their lives were never the same again. Which should beg the question for all of us, what in the world was so radical about Jesus' invitation that they would drop everything in their lives to follow him? Well, to understand this story more clearly, we need to step back into first century Jewish culture. And we need to remember that in that culture, Jesus was recognized as a rabbi. You see, if you were a first century Jewish child, you were sent to the school around the age of 6. Everybody went. And the focus of their educational system at that point was the first 5 books of the Bible called the books of Moses, or the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And so going to school consisted primarily of these young children working to memorize these texts. And so throughout these early years of schooling, if you were identified as the best of the best students, you would then be given the opportunity to advance into more schooling. You would go off and work to memorize the rest of the Jewish scriptures, Genesis through Malachi. But if you weren't identified as the best of the best of the best, by the time you were a teenager, you were told, you know what, this isn't for you. It's time for you to go home and learn the family business and get married and start having kids. But if you were the best of the best of the best students, and after you worked to memorize all of the Jewish scriptures, then you would have the opportunity to go and to find a rabbi. And you would try to apply to become one of his disciples. So the rabbi would interview you and would grill you about your knowledge of the Jewish scriptures. He'd ask you question after question to see if you had what it takes to become one of his disciples. Now you can understand how rigorous this was, and you can also see that most of these students would not become a follower of the rabbi. They wouldn't make the cut, so the rabbi would send them home too. He would say, go be with your family. Become a part of the family business. Get married. Have children. But for the select few, the best of the best of the best, who finally made the cut, who impressed the rabbi with their intelligence and their goodness, the rabbi would look at them and say 2 words: follow me. Well, in that moment, those students would leave behind everything.
And they would spend the rest of their lives trying to follow in the footsteps of their rabbi, hoping that one day they would be able to live their lives just like their rabbi. So that's what it means to be a disciple. That's what it meant. In the first century Jewish culture, to be a rabbi, to be a disciple of a rabbi, well, it meant everything. It's what every parent wanted for their child. So one day, Jesus, he comes walking along the shores of the Sea of Galilee. At this time, he was around the age of 30, which is when these rabbis really began their teaching ministry. And he walks up to Peter and Andrew, and he says two words to them: follow me. Now Matthew, in telling this story, makes it very clear that Peter and Andrew were already working as fishermen. And so if you've been paying attention at this point, you know how important this is to the story. Because it means that Peter and Andrew, at one point in their schooling, didn't make the cut. At one point they were told, you are not the best of the best students. At some point they were told, you know what, it's time for you to go home, because you don't have what it takes. You didn't make the cut. You are not going to be a disciple. So go home. Settle into a predictable and ordinary and forgetful life. But you, well, you're not going to be special. The same is true for James and John, and we're told we're also fishermen. They didn't make the cut either. They were told, you just don't have what it takes to be a disciple. But again, Jesus says to Peter and to Andrew and to James and to John, he says to them, follow me. Come and be my disciples. And in doing that, Jesus upsets the apple cart of that community. He says to them, I don't care if you are Jewish school dropouts. I don't care if the community elites have snubbed their noses at you. I don't care if you don't have the Bible memorized. I don't care if you are a little rough around the edges and stink of sweat and rotten fish and sea air. Because I look at you, and I think you can do what I do. I think you can be like me. With a gesture like that, you can see why they would drop their nets, leave behind everything, and run to Jesus. You know, Jesus' ministry and this story would be incredible if we just stopped there. But Jesus didn't stop there. For the rest of his ministry, he extended invitations to the people who didn't make the cut in life. And he said to them, follow me. Which is why Jesus had so many critics who would say, you know, Jesus' followers are nothing more than uneducated fishermen. They're tax collectors, they're scoundrels, they're sinners. They are not the best of the best. Jesus doesn't seem to care. Jesus just keeps saying to these people, follow me. And he chooses these people because he is laying the foundation for a movement that is going to make room for everybody. And this is a radical movement, my friends. It's a radical movement comprised of disciples who are educated and uneducated, who are rich and are poor, who are sinners and saints, who are men and women, who are outcasts and the not good enough. Jesus calls all of these people, and he says, "Come and follow me. You are worthy to be my disciple." And then he has the audacity to say to them, "You're going to do even greater things than me. You have the ability to follow in my footsteps." And all they do in response to that challenge is to forever change the shape of human history. Amazing, right? So, brothers and sisters, as we begin a new year with new opportunities for mission and ministry both within and beyond the walls of our churches, let us be reminded and clearly hear the good news that is coming to us from the mouth of Jesus. Let us hear the good news that is contained in these two simple yet powerful and life-changing words. Follow me. For in those two words, Jesus is saying to all of us, I am choosing you. I know you fully. I know your incredible potential for destruction, but I also know your incredible potential for good. I know your failures and your regrets and your hurts. And knowing all of this, I have sought you out. I know your poverty. I know your pain. I know that you at times are wounded and frightened and angry and tired and lonely and empty and tired of trying to be strong and put together all the time. But I have come to meet you where you live. I've come to meet you where you work and where you play. And I want you to follow me. And I'm going to love you as you are and not as you should be. Because quite frankly, you are never going to be as you should be. So just drop your nets. Drop whatever it is you are clinging to for dear life. And follow me. That is the call on all of our lives. Can you hear it today? Do you see the faith that Jesus has in us to change the world? And to do so by simple acts of feeding the hungry and giving water to the thirsty and clothing the naked and welcoming the stranger and caring for the sick and visiting those who are in prison. Do you believe that we as Jesus' disciples have the power to comfort the afflicted, but also the ability to afflict the comfortable? Do you believe that this motley crew of people that we call the church still has the ability to shine a light in this dark world? Do you believe it? Well, you had better believe it. Because Jesus does. And that's why he is calling us still to follow him.